The slave auction. The sun blazed fiercely over the dusty alien marketplace. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and despair, a reminder of the cruelty that took place there every day. Alien slavers shouted loudly, showing off their chained captives like they were nothing more than objects. Among them was Xena, a small, fragile-looking alien girl with dull gray skin and glowing violet eyes. She stumbled as the slaver yanked her forward, her wrists bound tightly with heavy chains. Xena's species, the Valari, were rare and often hunted for their rumored intelligence and mysterious abilities. But Xena wasn't treated like something valuable. She was dirty, bruised, and her spirit seemed broken. The slavers mocked her as they dragged her to the center of the stage. "She's useless," one slaver shouted, laughing cruelly. "Couldn't even lift a bag of supplies. But she's pretty to look at. Maybe someone will buy her for cheap." The crowd of buyers jeered and laughed. Xena kept her eyes on the ground, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. She had learned long ago that no one cared about her suffering. The chains on her wrists were heavy, but the weight in her heart was heavier. She had no hope left. But then the crowd grew quiet. A figure was approaching the stage, walking with a calm confidence that silenced even the loudest slavers. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and unlike anyone else there, he was human. His dark uniform hinted at military experience, and his sharp green eyes scanned the stage with precision. This was Commander Alex Drake, a man known in the outer colonies for his bravery and, oddly, his compassion. "What's a human doing here?" whispered one of the slavers nervously. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, especially in places like this market, where danger was always lurking. Alex stopped in front of the stage, his gaze landing on Xena. She could feel his eyes on her, but she didn't look up. She didn't care. Why should she? He was just another buyer, another master who would use her until she was no longer useful. "How much for her?" Alex's voice was calm but firm. The slavers blinked, surprised. One of them, a greasy-looking creature with green scales, laughed. "Her? Why waste your money on that one? She's weak, barely eats, and doesn't talk back. Not worth your time, human." Alex didn't blink. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pouch of credits. He tossed it onto the stage, the clink of coins silencing the slavers' laughter. "I'll take her." The slavers hesitated. They exchanged glances, unsure why anyone, especially a human, would want such a useless slave. But money was money. They unchained Xena and shoved her toward Alex, who caught her before she fell. For the first time, Xena looked up. Her violet eyes met Alex's green ones, and she froze. His expression wasn't cruel or angry like the others she had seen. Instead, it was calm, almost gentle. She didn't understand. "Come with me," Alex said softly, his voice steady. Xena didn't move. Was this a trick? Was he pretending to be kind just to make her let her guard down? Her legs trembled, and she thought about running. But where would she go? There was nowhere to hide on this planet. "Move," barked the slaver behind her, raising a whip. But Alex raised a hand, stopping him. "She's mine now. Don't touch her." The slaver grumbled but stepped back. Xena hesitated, then slowly followed Alex as he walked toward the edge of the market. Her chains were gone, but she still felt them. Her wrists ached, and her mind was clouded with fear. The market buzzed with whispers as they walked. Buyers and slavers alike stared at the strange pair, a human and a broken alien girl. Some laughed, others shook their heads, but no one dared to stop Alex. His presence was too commanding, too dangerous. As they neared the edge of the market, Xena saw Alex's ship. It was sleek and powerful, a clear sign of his skill and resources. Two more figures stood by the ramp, a towering robot with a shiny metallic body and a young human pilot who looked nervous. "Did you seriously buy a slave, Commander?" the pilot asked, wide-eyed. "She's not a slave," Alex replied firmly. "Not anymore." The pilot looked confused, but didn't argue. The robot, on the other hand, scanned Xena with glowing blue eyes. Subject appears malnourished and injured, it said in a mechanical voice. Recommendation: immediate medical attention. Xena flinched, expecting Alex to get angry or frustrated. Instead, he nodded. We'll take care of her once we're on board. The kindness in his voice was so strange to her that it almost felt like a trick. No one had ever spoken about her like that, as if she mattered. Her heart raced with confusion and fear. Why was he doing this? As they entered the ship, Xena glanced back at the market one last time. The slavers were already moving on to their next victim, their laughter echoing in the distance. For the first time, Xena felt something strange. Something she hadn't felt in years. It was small, fragile, but it was there. It was hope. The ship's doors closed behind her, and Xena stepped into a new life, though she didn't know it yet. For the first time, the chains on her wrists were gone, but the chains in her heart would take longer to break. The escape. The ship's interior was unlike anything Xena had seen before, clean, polished, and strangely warm. It didn't smell like damp sweat or rusted metal, like the slaver ships she'd been forced to live on. The walls glowed softly with blue lights, and the hum of the engines beneath her feet was steady, comforting. But Xena didn't feel comforted. She was tense, her mind racing with possibilities. Commander Alex Drake walked ahead of her, his heavy boots echoing on the floor. The young human pilot whispered something to him, glancing nervously at Xena. She caught only bits of their conversation. A bad idea. Dangerous. She could be spying. Alex stopped suddenly and turned to the pilot, his voice calm but commanding. I make the decisions here, Kayla. If you can't handle that, stay on the ship. Kayla flinched but nodded, falling silent. Xena's sharp violet eyes flicked between them. She couldn't decide if Alex's authority was comforting or terrifying. Follow me, Alex said, looking directly at Xena. His voice was steady, not harsh, but it left no room for argument. Xena hesitated. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to escape before the inevitable cruelty began. But something in Alex's eyes, something calm and unreadable, stilled her feet. Reluctantly, she followed. As they entered the control deck, Xena caught her breath. The ship's command center was sleek and spacious, its wide windows revealing a view of the marketplace below. She could see the bustling crowds, the slavers shouting, the desperate captives being dragged to their fates. For a moment, she wondered if she should have stayed there. At least there, she understood her place. The robot, tall and gleaming with silver plating, turned its head toward Alex. Commander, the fuel cells are charged, and hyperspace coordinates are locked. Departure is ready upon your command. Good, Alex said, settling into the pilot's seat. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. We leave now. But before Xena could even try to grasp what was happening, an alarm blared through the ship. The blue lights turned red, and the calm hum of the engines turned into a high-pitched whine. Proximity alert, the robot announced. Multiple ships incoming. Slaver insignia detected. Xena's heart dropped. The slavers hadn't just let her go. They were coming for her. And Alex. How did they track us so fast? Kayla shouted, rushing to her seat. Her fingers flew across the console. We just left the market. They didn't track us, Alex said, his voice grim. They sold me out. They must have guessed I'd try to leave with her. He glanced at Xena briefly. You're not just a random slave, are you? Xena's mouth opened, but no words came out. What could she say? She didn't even know why she was worth chasing. Alex didn't wait for an answer. Kayla, take the weapons. Valkyrie. He addressed the robot. Run interference on their targeting systems. And what about the girl? Kayla asked sharply. She stays here, Alex said firmly. But Xena wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the ships now visible through the windows. Sleek, black slaver vessels streaked toward them like hunting predators. She recognized the lid ship. It belonged to Vorak, one of the most brutal slaver warlords in the sector. He had a reputation for hunting escapees and making examples of them. Alex's ship jolted as a laser blast grazed the hull. Xena stumbled, grabbing onto a nearby console for balance. The slavers were closing in fast. "Hold on," Alex barked, slamming the controls forward. The ship lurched into motion, speeding away from the planet's surface. The stars stretched and blurred as they accelerated, but the slaver ships were faster. "They're locking onto us," Kayla shouted. "We won't make it to hyperspace." Xena's breathing quickened. Her hands gripped the console tightly. Memories of chains and pain flooded her mind. She couldn't go back. She couldn't. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "I didn't save you just to let us die here," he said, his eyes locking on Xena. "Do you trust me?" Xena blinked, stunned by the question. Trust? She didn't even know what that felt like. "Answer me," Alex demanded as another blast rocked the ship. I don't know," she stammered. "Then trust this," Alex said, his voice softer now. "I don't leave people behind. Not ever." Before she could respond, Alex's hands flew over the controls, and the ship dove sharply, narrowly dodging another laser blast. The slaver ships swarmed like vultures, firing relentlessly. Sparks flew as a blast hit the side of the ship, and alarms screamed louder. "Shields at 40%, Valkyrie reported. Kayla cursed under her breath. "This is insane. We need a miracle." Alex's jaw tightened. "We're making our own miracle." "Valkyrie, reroute all power to the engines. Kayla, prepare for a blind hyperspace jump." "Blind jump?" Kayla's eyes widened. "We don't even know what's out there. We could hit a star or—" "Do it," Alex snapped. The ship groaned as its engines roared to life, surging forward with newfound speed. Xena clung to the console, her heart pounding. She had no idea what was happening, but Alex's determination was infectious. As the slaver ships closed in for the kill, Alex hit the hyperspace controls. The stars outside the window elongated into streaks of light, and with a deafening roar, the ship vanished into the void. Silence fell over the cabin, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Xena slowly released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We're clear," Valkyrie announced. Kayla slumped back in her seat, breathing heavily. "You're insane, Commander." Alex didn't respond. He turned to Xena, his expression unreadable. "They didn't chase me. They chased you. Why?" Xena looked down at her hands, trembling. She had no answers, only fear. But deep inside, a spark of something else began to grow. She was free now. But freedom, she realized, came with its own dangers. The human's kindness. Xena sat quietly on the floor of the ship's medbay, her knees drawn to her chest. The clean, sterile air felt alien to her, as did the strange softness of the towel wrapped around her shoulders. For years, she had known only dirt, chains, and harsh words. Now she was free, or so Alex said, but she didn't know what freedom was supposed to feel like. The tall, silver robot, Valkyrie, stood nearby, its glowing blue eyes fixed on her. Its mechanical voice broke the silence. "Subject's vitals indicate malnutrition and elevated stress levels. Hydration is recommended." "Yeah, I figured," Alex said, stepping into the room. He was holding a tray with a bowl of soup and a cup of water. He crouched down in front of Xena and set the tray beside her. "Eat. You'll feel better." Xena didn't move. She stared at the food suspiciously, her sharp violet eyes narrowing. Was it poisoned? Was this some kind of trick? She wasn't used to kindness, and she certainly didn't trust it. Alex sighed, sitting cross-legged on the floor to meet her gaze. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you, and I don't want anything from you. You need to eat. That's all." Still, Xena didn't reach for the food. Alex picked up the cup of water, took a long sip, and set it back down. "See," Safe. Now it's your turn. Slowly, hesitantly, Xena picked up the cup. The cool water slid down her throat, soothing and unfamiliar. She hadn't tasted clean water in years. She glanced at Alex, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It wasn't pity, and it wasn't anger. It was something softer, something almost protective. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Why what?" Alex replied. "Why did you buy me?" Her voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" Alex leaned back, crossing his arms. "I didn't buy you. I freed you. There's a difference." Xena's brow furrowed. "No one does something for nothing." Alex chuckled dryly, but there was no humor in it. "You're not wrong. Most people don't, but I'm not most people." He paused, his expression turning serious. "I've seen too many lives destroyed because no one stood up to help. I couldn't let that happen to you." Xena shook her head, confused and frustrated. "I'm nothing. I'm weak. Worthless." Alex's jaw tightened. "Don't say that again." His tone was firm but not unkind. "You've been told that lie so many times you've started to believe it. But it's not true." She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. The words felt hollow, like an echo in a dark room. Suddenly, an alert echoed through the ship, breaking the moment. "Commander, incoming transmission from an unidentified vessel," Valkyrie announced. Alex stood, his face hardening. "Stay here," he told Xena. "Finish your food. I'll handle this." He left the medbay, the door sliding shut behind him. Xena stared at the tray, her appetite gone. The kindness Alex had shown her felt wrong. She didn't know how to process it. But then, curiosity tugged at her. Quietly, she slipped out of the medbay and crept down the hallway, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. She found the control room and peeked around the corner. Alex was standing at the main console, speaking with a holographic projection of an alien, a towering figure with sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. "Vorak." Xena's stomach twisted in fear. "You took something that belongs to me, human," Vorak snarled. His voice was deep and menacing, echoing through the room. "Return the girl, and I might let you live." "She doesn't belong to you," Alex said, his voice calm but cold. "She's free now." Vorak laughed, a cruel, guttural sound. "You don't know what you've done. That girl is no ordinary slave. She is Valari, a key to unimaginable power. Do you think I'll let you keep her?" Xena's breath caught. Power. What was he talking about? "I'm not afraid of you," Alex said evenly. "If you come for her, be ready to pay the price." "You're a fool," Vorak hissed. "She'll destroy you, just as she'll destroy herself. The Valari are cursed. You'll see." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the room in silence. Alex turned and saw Xena standing in the doorway. He didn't seem surprised. "How much did you hear?" "Enough," she whispered. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what he's talking about, but I'm not letting him take you. Not now. Not ever." "But why?" Xena asked again, her voice barely audible. "Why risk your life for me?" Alex stepped closer, his green eyes steady and unflinching. "Because no one deserves to be treated like you were. Not you, not anyone." For the first time, Xena felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It wasn't fear or anger. It was something fragile and strange. Hope. Alex turned back to the console, his hands moving over the controls. "We need to keep moving. Vorak won't give up easily. And if what he said is true, you're more important than either of us realized." Xena didn't know what to say. She stood there, watching as Alex prepared the ship for its next jump. For years, she had been nothing but a tool, a prisoner. But now, for the first time, she wondered if she could be something more. And if Alex believed in her, maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe in herself too. The warlord's secret. The hum of the ship's engines filled the quiet tension in the room. Xena sat in the corner of the control deck, her back pressed against the cold metal wall. She hadn't spoken much since Vorak's transmission, but her mind raced with questions. Vaylari, power, cursed. What did it all mean? Alex was busy at the main console, his fingers flying across the controls. The young pilot, Kayla, muttered something about fuel reserves, while Valkyrie monitored the ship's systems with unshakable precision. Xena felt out of place, like a broken piece in a machine that didn't need her. Finally, Alex turned to Valkyrie. Anything new from the scans? The robot's blue eyes flickered. Analysis of recent transmissions reveals encrypted messages between Vorak's fleet and an unknown source. Decoding suggests the subject, Vaylari, possesses latent abilities tied to neural tech integration. Alex frowned. Neural tech integration. That's not something you see every day. What else? The messages refer to a project called Resonance, Valkyrie continued. It is unclear what this entails, but records suggest Vaylari were targeted for experimentation during the Xenon War. Many were believed to have died. Xena's head snapped up. Experimentation. Her heart pounded. What kind of experiments? Alex asked, his voice low. Files are fragmented, Valkyrie replied. However, it appears the Vaylari were studied for their ability to manipulate advanced systems through thought alone. Thought. Alex's eyebrows shot up. You mean telepathy with machines? Valkyrie nodded. Primitive description, but accurate. Xena froze. The words struck something deep inside her, pulling at memories she had tried to bury. Flashes of cold labs, bright lights, and voices whispering about potential and failure. She clenched her fists, her breathing uneven. Alex noticed her reaction. Xena, he said gently, kneeling beside her. Do you know anything about this? Her eyes darted to his, wide and fearful. I don't know. I don't remember. She said quickly, her voice trembling. The slavers, they always said I was useless, worthless. Alex shook his head. They lied to you. Vorak wouldn't chase someone who was worthless. Kayla, still at her station, scoffed. Yeah, but if she's so powerful, why can't she do anything now? Xena flinched at the words, but Alex shot Kayla a glare. That's enough. Kayla shrugged and turned back to her console, muttering under her breath. Alex sighed and stood. We don't have time to figure this out here. Vorak's fleet is probably regrouping, and they'll be on us soon. We need answers, and I know just the place to get them. Xena looked up at him, confused. Where? Alex's lips tightened. A human colony. It's a research outpost not far from here. If anyone can explain what's happening to you, it's them. Kayla spun around in her chair. You mean Outpost Helios? Are you insane? That place is crawling with bounty hunters and smugglers. If Vorak doesn't find us, they will. It's a risk we'll have to take, Alex said firmly. We're running out of options. The journey to Helios was tense and silent. Xena stayed in her quarters, sitting on the edge of the small bed and staring at her hands. They looked so normal, so ordinary. How could these hands hold the kind of power Vorak seemed to think she had? But deep down, she knew Alex was right. The slaver's harsh words had buried her confidence, but pieces of her past were beginning to surface. Moments when machines flickered to life as she passed, or lights dimmed when her emotions spiraled out of control. There had to be something inside her. She just didn't know how to find it. When the ship finally docked at Outpost Helios, Xena's nerves were raw. The outpost was a sprawling structure floating in the void, its towering spires blinking with red and blue lights. As they walked down the ramp, Alex placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Stick close to me, he said. This place isn't exactly friendly. Xena nodded, her eyes darting nervously around the crowded hangar. Aliens and humans of all shapes and sizes bustled about, their voices a chaotic mix of languages. A grizzled old man approached them, his mechanical arm whirring as he extended it toward Alex. "Drake," he said with a smirk, "didn't think I'd see you here again. Last time you left, you blew up half my warehouse." "Nice to see you too, Miles," Alex replied dryly, shaking the man's hand. "I need a favor." Miles raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting to Xena. "What's the story with her?" Alex's expression hardened. "She's under my protection. That's all you need to know." Miles shrugged. "Fine, but favors aren't free. What do you want?" "I need access to your data archives," Alex said. "Anything you have on the Valari or Project Resonance." Miles's smirk vanished. "You're playing with fire, Drake. You know that, right?" "I know," Alex said firmly. "But I don't have a choice." While Miles worked on decrypting the files, Xena wandered through the dimly lit corridors of the outpost. She felt out of place here, just as she did everywhere else. But something about the hum of machinery made her pause. It was faint, but she could feel it, like a whisper in the back of her mind. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against a nearby control panel. The screen flickered, then lit up, displaying streams of data. Xena gasped and pulled her hand back. "Xena." Alex's voice startled her. He was standing a few feet away, watching her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "I didn't mean to," she stammered. "It just happened." Alex stepped closer, his expression softening. "You're starting to unlock it," he said. "Whatever's inside you, it's waking up." Before she could respond, a sharp alarm echoed through the outpost. A voice blared over the speakers. "Attention. Unidentified ships detected. Slaver insignia confirmed. All personnel prepare for lockdown." Xena's heart sank. Vorak had found them. Alex's jaw tightened. "It's time to see what you're really capable of," he said, his voice steady. "Are you ready?" Xena didn't feel ready, but as the echoes of footsteps and shouts filled the air, she knew there was no turning back. For the first time in her life, she had a chance to fight for herself, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. The awakening. The alarms blared louder as Outpost Helios descended into chaos. Red warning lights painted the corridors in harsh shadows, and the low rumble of distant explosions sent vibrations through the walls. Xena gripped the edge of a console, her breathing shallow. Vorak's ships were here, and they were closing in fast. Alex stood at the control deck, barking orders. "Kayla, prep the ship for immediate launch. Valkyrie, monitor the outpost's shields and give me a tactical overlay of their fleet." "Confirmed," Valkyrie replied, its mechanical voice unshaken by the urgency. Xena, frozen in place, watched the screens as red dots. Vorak's ships swarmed toward the station. The outpost's defense systems fired back, but the slaver ships moved with precision, tearing through the automated turrets like paper. "They're going to overwhelm us," Kayla shouted, her fingers flying over the console. "Not if we move fast," Alex snapped, turning to Xena. His voice softened slightly. "Xena, I need you to trust me now more than ever. This is it. Whatever Vorak wants from you, whatever power you have, we need it to survive." Xena shook her head, her violet eyes wide with fear. "I don't know how. I've never done anything like this before." "Yes, you have," Alex said, stepping closer. "You just didn't know it. Remember what happened earlier when you touched that control panel? That wasn't an accident. It's in you. You can do this." The floor shook violently as another explosion rocked the station. Xena stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the console. Her mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything but face this. But Alex's voice cut through her panic. "Xena, look at me." She met his gaze, and for the first time, she saw no doubt in his eyes, only belief. "You're not alone," Alex said firmly. "I'm here. We'll do this together." Xena swallowed hard, her hands trembling. Slowly, she nodded. "The battle begins." The control deck's main screen flickered to life, displaying a tactical map of the battlefield. Vorax's fleet had surrounded the outpost, their ships forming a tight net to cut off any escape. "We won't survive a direct fight," Kayla said, her voice tight with fear. "Their firepower is overwhelming. We don't need to fight," Alex said, glancing at Xena. "We just need a window." Xena stared at the screens, her heart pounding. The glowing dots, ships, shields, weapons, seemed to pulse faintly, like living things. She could feel them, not just see them. It was subtle, like a faint whisper in the back of her mind. Alex noticed her focus. "Good," he said. "You're starting to connect. Don't fight it. Let it guide you." I don't know how to control it," Xena admitted, her voice shaking. "Then start small," Alex said. "Focus on one thing. Can you feel the outpost's defense systems? Try to link with them." Xena hesitated, then closed her eyes. She reached out, not with her hands, but with her thoughts. At first, there was nothing, just the cold void of space. But then, she felt a flicker of warmth, a pulse of energy. It was the outpost's central defense grid, a vast network of cannons and shields. I feel it," she whispered. "Good," Alex said. "Now, override it. Take control." Xena's breathing steadied as she focused. The whispers grew louder, clearer. She imagined the cannons turning, the shields redirecting. The outpost responded instantly, its systems aligning with her thoughts. Kayla gasped. The defense grid just recalibrated. "How is she?" "Don't question it," Alex interrupted. "Xena, keep going. Focus on their fleet." Facing Vorax's fleet, Xena opened her eyes, and for the first time, she felt something close to confidence. She could feel Vorax's ships now, their engines humming like distant echoes. The whispers in her mind turned into voices, fragments of data flowing through her consciousness. "They're coordinating through a central hub," she said suddenly. "If I can disrupt it, they'll lose formation." Alex's eyebrows lifted. "You can do that." I think so," Xena said, though she wasn't entirely sure. "You don't need to be sure," Alex said. "Just try. We'll cover you." Xena took a deep breath and reached out again. The slaver fleet's systems resisted her at first, like a locked door. But as she focused, the resistance gave way, and she felt herself slipping inside. The ship's systems were chaotic and overwhelming. Engines roaring, weapons charging, pilots barking orders. It was too much, and for a moment, Xena felt herself drowning in the noise. "Stay with me," Alex shouted, his voice anchoring her. Xena gritted her teeth, pushing through the chaos. She found the central hub, a massive command ship at the heart of the fleet. Its systems were more complex, but Xena didn't need to destroy it. She just needed to confuse it. Her mind latched onto the command codes, twisting them, redirecting them. Alarms blared across Vorax's ships as their systems malfunctioned. Engines sputtered, weapons fired at random, and shields flickered erratically. "It's working," Kayla shouted. "They're falling apart." The turning point. Vorax's voice suddenly boomed over the comms. "Enough. You think you can defy me, Valari. You don't even know what you are." Xena flinched but didn't break her focus. "You're nothing but a broken experiment," Vorax snarled. "A tool. And like all tools, you'll be discarded once you've served your purpose." Xena's hands clenched into fists. His words stung, but Alex's voice cut through the noise. "He's wrong, Xena. You're not a tool. You're more than that. Prove it to him." Something inside Xena snapped. The fear and doubt that had held her back for so long crumbled away, replaced by a fierce determination. "No," she whispered, her voice growing stronger. "I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's." With a final surge of effort, Xena sent a wave of energy through the fleet's systems. Vorax's command ship shuddered as its power grid overloaded, forcing the slaver fleet into a full retreat. The control deck erupted in cheers, but Xena barely heard them. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive. Alex crouched beside her, a small smile on his face. "You did it," he said. Xena looked up at him, her violet eyes shining with a mixture of relief and newfound strength. "We did it." For the first time, Xena felt something she had almost forgotten: pride, trust, and transformation. The ship was quiet now, drifting safely in the void after the chaos of the battle. Vorak's fleet had retreated, but the weight of his parting words hung heavily in the air. Xena sat in the common area, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea that Alex had insisted she drink. It tasted strange, bitter but soothing. She stared into the swirling liquid, lost in thought. "You're too hard on yourself." Xena looked up sharply. Alex was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, his green eyes studying her. He wasn't wearing his usual stern expression. Instead, he looked tired. "I nearly got us killed," Xena said softly, her voice tinged with shame. "I barely knew what I was doing. And yet we're alive." Alex replied, stepping into the room. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "You're stronger than you think, Xena." She shook her head, her violet eyes shimmering with uncertainty. "Vorak was right. I'm just a tool, a failed experiment." Alex's fist hit the table lightly, not in anger but to make her focus. "No, you're not. He wants you to believe that because fear is the only weapon he has left. Don't give him the satisfaction." Xena opened her mouth to argue but stopped. Something about Alex's words struck a chord deep inside her, a truth she wasn't ready to face yet. A moment of connection. The ship's engines hummed softly, filling the silence between them. Alex leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "Do you know why I joined the outer colonies?" he asked suddenly. Xena frowned, caught off guard. "No. I lost my family during the Tsenan War," Alex said quietly. "My parents, my brother, gone. All because people like Vorak thought they could take whatever they wanted, destroy whatever stood in their way." Xena felt a pang of sadness. She hadn't expected Alex to share something so personal. "I thought joining the colonies would give me a purpose," Alex continued. "And it did, in a way. But what really drives me isn't revenge. It's stopping people like Vorak from breaking others the way he broke me." He met her gaze, his voice softening. "You're not broken, Xena. You survived things most people couldn't imagine. That makes you stronger than you realize." Xena's throat tightened. She didn't know how to respond. Discovering the truth. The moment was interrupted by Valkyrie's voice over the comms. "Commander, I have decrypted additional data from Vorak's command ship. You may want to review it immediately." Alex stood, his demeanor shifting back to business. "Let's go." Xena followed him to the control room, her curiosity outweighing her exhaustion. The room's central display lit up, showing a series of fragmented files. Project Resonance, Valkyrie began, was an initiative during the Tsenan War. Its goal was to weaponize the Valkyries' unique neural abilities by creating living conduits for advanced systems control. Xena's heart pounded as images of alien subjects, including young Valkyrie, appeared on the screen. Some looked terrified, others lifeless. "They used my people," she whispered, her voice trembling. Valkyrie continued. "The experiments were brutal and largely unsuccessful. Most subjects perished, unable to handle the strain. However, a few showed promise, particularly a group of children with unusually strong neural signatures." Xena's legs felt weak. "I was one of them, wasn't I?" Alex placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Valkyrie." "Yes," the robot confirmed. "Xena matches the profile of a surviving subject. However, her neural signature suggests a dormant phase. This would explain her delayed abilities." The room fell silent. Xena stared at the screen, the weight of her past pressing down on her. "I wasn't supposed to survive," she said bitterly. "I was just lucky." Alex stepped in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "No, You're not here because of luck. You're here because you fought to stay alive, even when the universe tried to crush you. That's not luck, Xena. That's strength. A test of trust. As they spoke, Kayla's voice cut through the comms. We've got incoming. A small scout ship, likely Vorax. They're trying to locate us. Alex turned to Xena. This is it. If we can take out that scout ship without alerting the rest of Vorax fleet, we'll buy ourselves some time. Xena's hands clenched. You want me to do it? I know you can, Alex said, his voice steady. I'll guide you, but this is your fight now. Her pulse raced, but she nodded. She had to try. Xena sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hands hovering over the controls. The scout ship appeared on the display, its weapons powering up. She reached out with her mind, feeling the ship's systems. The connection was easier this time, less chaotic. Focus on their engines, Alex instructed. Disable them before they can send a signal. Xena closed her eyes, her thoughts zeroing in on the scout ship's thrusters. The whispers in her mind turned into clear commands, and she directed a surge of energy toward the ship's engines. The scout ship sputtered, its engines cutting out. They're dead in the water, Kayla shouted. Now finish it, Alex said. Xena hesitated. She could feel the ship's crew, panicked, scrambling for control. They were her enemies, but they were also alive. They'll call Vorak if we let them go. Alex reminded her. We can't take that risk. Xena's chest tightened. With a deep breath, she sent a final pulse through the ship's systems. Its power core overloaded, erupting in a silent explosion. Transformation. The silence that followed was deafening. Xena opened her eyes, her breathing unsteady. You did it, Alex said, his voice calm but proud. Xena looked at him, unsure how to feel. For the first time, she had used her abilities deliberately, but the weight of what she had done was heavy. You made the right call, Alex assured her, and you're stronger for it. Xena nodded slowly. She didn't feel like a tool anymore, or even a survivor. For the first time, she felt like something more. Someone capable of shaping her own fate. The war wasn't over, and Vorak wasn't done with her yet. But now, she was ready to fight back. The final battle. The silence of the void surrounded Alex's ship as they prepared for what would come next. Vorak's fleet was regrouping, and they wouldn't stay off their trail for long. Xena stood in the control deck, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of the choices she knew she would have to make. Alex paced in front of the main console, his usual calm replaced with a determined energy. We're running out of time, he said. Valkyrie, any signs of their fleet's movement? Analysis indicates fleet convergence near Helio's outer sector. The robot replied. Projected interception in 6 hours. Kayla, seated at the navigation controls, turned to Alex. They're coming for her, Commander. Vorak won't stop until he gets what he wants. Xena looked up sharply. Then we stop him. For good. Alex raised an eyebrow, surprised at the confidence in her voice. Xena, that's a bold statement. Do you know what that means? She nodded, her violet eyes glowing faintly as her resolve solidified. He'll never stop chasing me. He'll never stop hunting others like me. If we don't end this now, he'll win. Alex studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, but if we're going to do this, we do it smart. The plan. The crew gathered around the central console, its display glowing with a tactical map of the area. Vorak's fleet was marked as a cluster of red dots, a menacing force that dwarfed Alex's small ship. We can't take them head-on, Alex said, but we don't need to. Vorak's strength lies in his command ship. Take that out, and the rest of his fleet will crumble. And how exactly do we do that? Kayla asked, her tone skeptical. Its ship is a fortress. We use their tech against them, Alex replied, glancing at Xena. She can disrupt their systems, just like she did before. But this time, we go straight for Vorak. Xena's stomach churned. The idea of facing Vorak himself was terrifying, but she forced herself to nod. "What do I need to do?" "You'll link with his ship's systems," Alex explained. "Find the command core and overload it. Once it goes, the entire ship will be disabled." Xena swallowed hard. "What about Vorak?" Alex's eyes hardened. "Leave him to me." The ambush. They approached Vorak's fleet under the cover of a nearby asteroid field. Xena sat in the co-pilot's seat, her nerves frayed but her mind focused. She could feel the faint hum of the enemy ships, their systems like distant whispers in the back of her mind. "Valkyrie, status?" Alex asked. "Enemy fleet is holding position," the robot replied. "Vorak's command ship is at the center. No signs of immediate engagement." "Good," Alex said. "Kayla, keep us out of their scanners. Xena, get ready." Xena closed her eyes, reaching out with her thoughts. The whispers grew louder as her mind connected to the enemy ships. Vorak's fleet felt like a living organism, its ships moving in perfect synchronization. At the center was Vorak's command ship, a towering behemoth of black metal and glowing red lights. "I can feel it," Xena whispered. "Good," Alex said. "Wait for my signal." The ship slipped closer, weaving through the asteroids until they were within range. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the control deck. "They'd spotted us," Kayla shouted. "No time to wait," Alex said. "Xena, now." The link. Xena's eyes snapped open, glowing with an intense violet light. Her hands gripped the console as her mind connected fully with Vorak's command ship. The experience was overwhelming. Layers of data, power surges, and chaotic signals flooded her senses. But Xena didn't back down. She pushed deeper, her thoughts cutting through the noise until she reached the ship's command core. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. "Good," Alex said. "Disable their weapons first. Then target the core." Xena focused on the weapons systems, her mind weaving through the layers of security. One by one, the ship's cannons went silent. "Weapons offline," Valkyrie confirmed. "Keep going," Alex urged. Xena pushed further, her mind locking onto the core. But just as she began to overload it, a voice echoed in her mind, a deep, menacing presence. "Foolish child," Vorak's voice sneered. "Did you really think you could defeat me?" Xena gasped, her connection wavering. Vorak's mind pushed back against hers, a crushing force that threatened to overwhelm her. "You are nothing without me," Vorak said. "You exist because I allowed it. Now you will return to me, or I will destroy everything you hold dear." The turning point. Xena's breathing quickened as panic set in. She felt herself slipping, the connection faltering. "Xena, focus." Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "I can't," she cried. "He's too strong." "You're stronger," Alex said firmly. "You've survived worse than him. Remember who you are." Xena's mind steadied. Vorak's voice still echoed, but she forced herself to push back. "You don't control me," she said through gritted teeth. "Not anymore." With a surge of determination, Xena unleashed her power. The command core erupted in a cascade of energy, sending shockwaves through the ship. Vorak's voice roared in anger, but Xena didn't stop. She severed her connection, and the command ship shuddered violently. The end of Vorak. As the command ship began to fall apart, Alex and Valkyrie led a daring charge aboard the vessel. Alex confronted Vorak in the burning remains of his throne room, the slaver warlord towering over him. "You've lost," Alex said, leveling his blaster. "You think this ends with me?" Vorak snarled. "The galaxy will always find new chains to bind the weak." "Not if we keep breaking them," Alex replied, firing the final shot. A new beginning. Back aboard their ship, Xena sat quietly, her body exhausted, but her mind clearer than it had ever been. Vorak was gone, his fleet scattered. For the first time, she felt free, not just from chains, but from the fear that had ruled her life. "You did it," Alex said, sitting beside her. "We did it," Xena corrected, a small smile forming on her lips. Alex chuckled. "What now?" Xena looked out at the stars. "We keep fighting. For those who can't. Just like you did for me." Alex nodded, his own smile faint but genuine. "Then let's get to it." The ship sped off into the stars, a new chapter waiting to be written. For Xena, it was no longer about survival. It was about making a difference, and she was ready.